now, the United States, in terms of where we are struggling in this war front, because a few big ships have been hit by Iranian missiles, is to defend China's economic interest. That's where their oil comes from, not ours. They're essentially trying to hurt China until the US backs down over this. Like, the news says all of this without explaining it to people in stark terms.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about the signals that we have of a massive change in how China might be thinking about itself foreign policy-wise.
No.
Specifically, they shut down their flights over Taiwan, where they used to have constant sort of military antagonistic flights over Taiwan. They said, oh, this is because, you know, we're going to have this upcoming meeting with Trump. Or people have said, well, maybe it's because of oil prices. It happened literally the next sortie that was supposed to fly over after the first news of the bombing started. So it's obvious that's not the case.
Well,
And specifically, what I want to talk about is not just this that happened with China, but in Iran, in Venezuela, and in another instance in Pakistan, Chinese equipment, which they had touted and perhaps believed internally to be top of the line and equivalent to US equipment, failed in a level that was beyond spectacular. You've got to keep in mind, Iran had a $5 billion weapons deal with China. And so they reportedly had some of the best equipment there. And not just that, we'll go over what analysts were saying, but, you know, you have Peter Zeihan calling Caracas a fortress, you know, and impossible to invade. You have other analysts saying Iran, there's just nothing you can do. You know, it's completely impregnable. And yet, and I'd like to point out, people, like, if you watch something that's tainted by like the biased media sources, you'll get a very bad understanding, I think, of what's going on right now. And I think a lot of people, when I hear them talk about what's happening, for example, in Iran or what happened in Venezuela, for context, we lost only 2 planes, and those were to friendly fire. We have lost no boats, okay? And in terms of the very light, I think it's 7 casualties now, it's because of like random missiles of bases. This is astonishing when you're talking about these attacks taking off the board within a matter of months, Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba, which was reliant on Venezuela. But the point here being is China, I think, is now, and we'll go into evidence of this, why this would be, sort of going back over the books and having to rethink, like, are we anywhere near the military power we thought we were?
Okay. Hold on, though. The U.S., shot down 2 of our own planes?
It wasn't us. It was another ally. I'll get into it.
Okay.
No, this is actually insane. Like, at this point, we have total air dominance in Iran at this point, which basically means we can fly wherever we want within what was one of the most hostile countries on earth to the United States until fairly recently. All of this happened without China, and Russia actually has attempted to help a little bit with the Iran situation. But keep in mind, if you go to CCP videos, they would regularly talk about how the reason why the US hasn't done anything in Venezuela is because we're afraid of China.
Why has the United States held back for so long and still dared not really strike Venezuela? This whole thing is pretty strange. US
Chinese
warships
media.
were already deployed in the Caribbean. The threats were made loud and clear, yet nothing actually happened because China is watching from behind. And Venezuela itself isn't easy to deal with either. It has real backing from China. Money when it needs money, supplies when it needs supplies. That means if the US attacks, it won't be anything like Iraq. Maduro is actually quite clever. He keeps saying, China's victory is our victory, deliberately tying himself to China and making Washington even more hesitant to act.
That was the CCP talking position, right?
Interesting. Well, what's also interesting too, and why I'm really glad you're talking about this, is what I'm hearing from mainstream we'll say, progressive leaning YouTube people and from mainstream media is that the United States is putting itself in a uniquely strategically weak position vis-a-vis China because we are diminishing our backstock of weapons on Iran, making us unable to potentially support Taiwan should China make a move.
That is
So-
okay. So, like, we should talk about how embarrassing this situation is for China right now. The way that Iran is trying to get us to stop attacking them,
Mhm.
okay, is by doing enough economic damage that the US feels it needs to pull back. The
Right.
core way that they are doing that is attempting to increase shipping prices through the Strait of Hormuz. If that was cut off, the core country that's going to fail is China.
Mhm.
Right now, the United States, in terms of anywhere where we have our back against the wall in this war front, anywhere where we are struggling in this war front, because a few big ships have been hit by Iranian missiles, is to defend China's economic interest. That's where their oil comes from, not ours. We don't get anything from the Strait of Hormuz. That's China.
Yeah.
Had you contextualized that, Simone?
Huh. Well, it's certainly not what people are talking about. So no, I wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't top of mind. I mean, people had mentioned like, well, the US isn't directly affected by the, oil interruption, but that doesn't matter because globalization means the US is affected if anyone else is affected. That's
Yes,
the
and
narrative.
who is most affected? China. China is the country that is most affected by what's happening right now in terms of global powers. And it's so weird how they gloss over that. They're like, this could cause a global economic crash, instigated obviously not by the United States because we now have a bunch more oil, but by outside powers collapsing. What outside power are you talking about there, buddy? Because I can think of one that depends on this strait being open a heck of a lot. And we've talked about this in other videos, but I think a lot of people do not contextualize how much China depends on this. Huge chunk. If the Strait of Malacca was closed, which would be a little bit closer, they're losing 45% of, and I've heard other estimates as high as 80% of their imported energy. Which would be devastating. Not only that, but China is a net food importer and a net phosphorus importer, which is
Where are they
doubly
getting
bad
their
for China.
phosphorus, though?
Because we'll do a second video on this. Morocco did this play where it took the Western Sahara, which is like, they did a really good job of it as well.
Oh,
but
you mentioned this. They're just
but
like quietly doing a land grab. Is
it
that
has the
right?
vast majority of the world's phosphorus supply, which is necessary to create fertilizer and
Good for
isn't something
them.
we can create artificially yet.
All right, Morocco.
They have like 13x the amount that China has.
Mm.
And so another thing about this conflict, which is interesting that you point this out, is so not only is 17% of China's oil coming from Iran and Venezuela, but a lot of the rest of their oil comes from countries that are now better friends with us because of this conflict, specifically Saudi Arabia. Everyone out there who's like, oh, the United States is doing this because we're being manipulated by Israel and the Jews and everything like that. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. You want to believe that. But the reality of geopolitics is that this is as much something that Saudi Arabia wants as something that Israel wants. And Saudi Arabia has a lot of global geopolitical power, specifically because of the concentration of wealth within the country, which allows them to do things that other countries cannot do. But secondarily, because of their ability to cut off oil supply to other players. If you have any degree of the control of Iranian, Venezuela, and Saudi oil, you control a huge chunk. And then the US oil, which is a huge chunk of global oil supply, just a huge chunk of the global oil supply. So that's also super relevant to think about. But I'll get into the points here in regards to where I think things are going in Iran right now. My read of the situation is a lot of, if this ends up working out the way that Trump wants it to work out to in a best case scenario, is they need to, when I say they, I mean Mossad, needs to kill the new Ayatollah. If they can successfully show that if you put in an Ayatollah that is not willing to play ball, we'll just keep killing them. Eventually, one of these Ayatollahs, because like the one that they put in, actually, let's talk about like the religious significance of what's going on right now. So they put in an Ayatollah that is the direct son of the last Ayatollah, which both the last Ayatollah and the first Ayatollah put in writing that they're never supposed to do, and that would make them a, a hereditary rule country again. And they said that that was anti-Islamic.
Yeah.
And not only is this guy horrendously corrupt, hundreds of millions in the UK right now in terms of like laundered estates and everything, but in Islam, this is shown as happening in the Quran. When a country loses a war, Allah says, I make you do that. Like this happens to you because you are not being faithful to me in the right way. And so this puts a bit of a mandate of heaven within what's going on in Iran right now for the person who was elected Ayatollah in an anti-Islamic fashion. Which is ironic that the former Ayatollahs took that position because they're Shia, and the Shia is a faction of Islam that split came over wanting Islam to be more hereditary.
Yeah.
But whatever, maybe they can get around it with that, right? But the point here being is, even if we just pull out, people can be like, well, now Iran is more motivated to attack us. And it's like, well, they were certainly motivated to attack us before, right? Most of the terrorist action that we have been dealing with globally, other than the stuff that's funded by the Saudis and the Wahhabis, was funded by Iran. And this is why support for the war is so strong in the US military. There were some recent polls about this. And I think it's because, even though that they're the ones who are most directly impacted by having to go into action where there is action, they also realize that this has been the group that we've actually been fighting throughout all Middle Eastern conflicts that we're just pussyfooting. But let's get into this. China significantly reduces military aircraft incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone starting on February 27th, 2026, marking an abrupt, unexplained pause in what had been near daily operations. This halt lasted at least 7 days initially, the longest such period of time since Taiwan began publicly tracking these before the 2020s. So note, this is the longest we've ever seen since the 2020s. And this period of no planes was only ended by the resumption of just 2 aircraft. And these were surveillance, not military aircraft or traditional like fighting aircraft, on March 6th, followed by minimal continued activity. Now, a few interesting notes as to China's position right now and why this may have China so much to see their equipment fail so spectacularly in a public context is China over the past year has reduced, actually I think it's over the past couple of years, has reduced its military purchases by 73%. And the reason they've reduced military purchases is because they went with this policy of we want to produce more internally.
That makes sense. I mean, from a national security standpoint, you should be internally producing these things.
Right. Unless it turns out that you can't make things internally or everything internal is corrupt. Then they have the secondary issue, and see our video about the coup that happened was in China recently. And I mean, I still think the evidence points to this. But one of the guys, I love it that some of our people are like, no. This was just a totally normal thing for Xi to illegally, mind you, this was illegal within the CCP because it was the top council, and to take action against other members of the council required a majority vote of the council. The problem is that Xi was arresting the only 2 remaining members of the council other than him and the head of the secret police. And so he couldn't have gotten a majority vote. And a lot of people were like, oh, this may have just been a normal thing to have happen within China or something like this. So some side notes, after that, immediately they do this big announcement about this, which they've never done before. Normally when they're doing corruption cleanups, they don't immediately then be like, this guy was a traitor to the nation, like super strong wording in major publications, and then withdraw it the next day, which was really interesting as well. Showed that there's some like power stuff going on there. It's really fascinating. This happened since then. Is it, what happened to that guy coming through the back channel? He's dead.
Oh, just murdered or just
Oh, likely. They said he had medical complications.
Oh,
So this hasn't been announced officially, but this is what the rumor mill is, and there hasn't been any proof of his life, which, given that there is a rumor of this, you think that if he was alive, they would be like, and here's proof that he's still alive.
Sure.
But this matters a lot from Chinese perspective, because it means their entire upper military brass has been removed at this point, right? And there have been rumors that Xi actually wanted to go and try to take Taiwan during this last US election cycle. And that it was these two top generals that were keeping him from doing that, saying this is a bad idea.
These are generals who, per the previous podcast you did on this, were more experienced. They were some of the most...
They were the only people with real experience. Like,
they've seen war before. They've seen China involved in military action, and they, I guess, had presumably the wisdom to say, let's not do this.
Yes. And if I was going to suspect anything before I get further here, what I think might be going through Xi's head with all of this, put yourself in Xi's position, okay? He takes out these two top generals because he sees them as blocking his ability to do what China needs to do, which is just retake Taiwan, okay? He thinks they're blocking him. They're not really listening, blah, 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 blah. So he does that. And keep in mind, these people have been long-term friends of Xi as well, right? Like they were not in the anti-Xi faction. These people were always in the Xi faction.
The inner circle.
And don't be stupid about this. So he's likely having some internal feelings about this. The point I'm making here is that Xi feeling very certain about all of this until, he's killed one of his best friends for a long time. And then all of the things that guy warned him about, and was the very reason he believed that guy was betraying him, not just that guy, but two guys, start coming true one after another. And you start to think, oh my God, am I actually was I wrong to do this? But also now, he's responsible for what China does next. He actually needs to, because he doesn't have anyone else in the room anymore, meaningfully. And this is similar to what I say about relationships. The reason why it's useful to structure a relationship for a man to have all of the power is because when a man has to make final decisions and only has you to consult, he's actually often going to, unless he's a complete evil sociopath, going to make decisions that are in your favor more, because he doesn't feel that there's some alternate source there that's, arguing against him and he needs to compromise. He needs to think, okay, now I'm fully responsible for everyone. And Xi may finally be in that position. Now that he's taken everyone who can disagree with him out of the room, he needs to begin to model their opinions. And he might not have been doing that before. He might have been using them to model the opinions of the why would it be a bad idea to go directly after Taiwan faction.
Yeah.
Immediately after he does this is when the Venezuela thing happens, which he had believed was impossible. Most of the world's top military analysts believed was impossible.
Yeah.
Then a few months later, the Iran thing happens. And increasingly, and this is also really important, China has become isolated because of its reaction to these individual instances. Every time a Chinese ally who China had promised they would protect comes into a situation like this, and China does literally nothing but sends a strongly worded email, that makes it so much less likely that any other Chinese ally is going to come to their aid if a conflict actually were to begin. And I think that this has become dramatically starker in a modern context than it was before this. So if you go, let's go 6 months ago, okay? China attacks Taiwan. Now, China's going to be saying, yes, America has allies in the region, Japan, Korea, Australia, but, and I'm just here listing allies that I am fairly certain would militarily go to bat over this, right? But we also have allies, throughout the globe, Iran and Venezuela and Russia, and they're going to put on either economic pressure or military pressure to help us. The problem is that right now it doesn't look like that. It's very obvious Iran isn't going to be able to do anything, no matter what happens, even if the war ends up in the best possible scenario for them, which really for them is the U.S. What does Iran want? It wants the U.S. to pull out without the guy being killed and then no long-term geopolitical destabilization within their country. The problem is even that would be a win for the United States when contrasted with the this status quo, right? Iran basically just wants this to end or drag the United States into something long-term that causes, again, geopolitical strife, but that geopolitical strife will be felt disproportionately by China, right? So again, it's like a weird situation. So in Iran's best case scenario, China is one of the primary people who suffers, right?
I don't follow that. And I think what Iran wants is Israel gone off the map and the US not involved.
No, I'm talking about realistic paths they could go from where they are now.
Oh.
Iran's strategy right now is like, you know, we punched them. They're trying to like grab us and hold us in place to be like, now you can't get out. Now you're entrenched within this fight.
Well, yeah, they're just trying to basically last us out until this becomes too politically unpopular for us to continue. And then we back out. And then they just continue on with their current regime. That's their plan.
For some idea of how bad things are and how potentially unrealistic this is for Iran, they just froze some large banks, I think all the civilian bank accounts, meaning that it looks like the government is just going to begin to steal money from its civilian population because it does not have enough to pay to keep this war going. That's their best case scenario, but they're still geopolitically completely isolated after that at this point because they spazzed out and attacked every one of their neighbors. And the reason they did that is because they were trying to create economic damage. The problem is it geopolitically isolated them. And the core economic damage they're doing globally is to China, not to the United States, right? Like they're essentially trying to hurt China until the US backs down over this, which is a terrible situation. Like the news says all of this without explaining it to people in stark terms that really better gives you an idea of China's position. So even in the best case scenario for Iran, China is in a terribly backseat position. But anyway, so China does decide it wants to go into this war now. Now, the position that it's in is not China and Taiwan and China asking, does the U.S. actually involve itself? Because I think with a lot of this, you know, historically Biden said that we wouldn't. I think Trump has wavered on whether or not we definitely would try to defend Taiwan. I think that China is now getting the perception that the United States would try to defend Taiwan if they went in. You know, after seeing what happened in Iran and Venezuela, I think they're getting the idea of, oh, as long as Donald Trump's in power, it's a yes from the United States.
Right.
And the problem with a yes from the United States on Taiwan from China's perspective after not backing its own allies is Russia obviously isn't going to be able to do anything really differentially to support them. Iran's out of the picture. Venezuela's out of the picture. Every regional power of relevance except North Korea, which I'll get to in a little bit. And yet within the region, if the United States decided to do something, at the very least, Japan's going to jump in, especially with their current president, who says that Margaret Thatcher is her primary political inspiration and is a politician. We maybe should do a whole episode on just her. She's awesome. I
think they also have invested more in the military.
So they've increased their military spending. If you look at animes recently, like Gate and stuff like that, they've become incredibly more militaristic and jingoistic in terms of military fantasies. Japan wants to be, and very core to their culture historically, is brutal militarism. And
so it's just no longer hashtag too soon. Like we finally gotten to the point where
it's no longer hashtag too soon. They are
enough time has passed where they can like be military and not be creepy anymore.
Yeah, they're not like Europe, where Europe is like, oh, you know, what if like young men die in war or something like that, or like imagine the burden to us. The young Japanese men are like, yeah, like this is going to be awesome. In part because the way that the history of World War II is taught to them and the way that the history of their own wars is taught to them is so jingoistic that it's really either they're the victims or they're just winning, right? It's never like this is a morally complicated thing to be doing. And with the United States on their back and potentially a moral reason to justify them going to war, they're going to be quite excited about it. Would Australia get involved? maybe, I mean, they're hugely economically tied to China. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit harder to say on that front.
They're in a very fraught position. Yeah. And
Same
in the
with,
past, China has thrown its weight around with Australia.
yeah,
So
same with South Korea. But why South Korea is sort of irrelevant whether or not they get involved, which is an interesting position, is South Korea, like, so China decides to go for Taiwan. The natural thing for them to do, North Korea recently has been doing major arms purchases of modern weapons. And a lot of people think that they might be seriously considering an invasion at this point. I mean, the question is why would they be seriously considering one at this point? And it might be because it would be a jointly timed thing if Xi Jinping has been planning to attack Taiwan. It may be a joint operation, right? That's when it would make sense to do that. If both countries have this, wish list, I want to go in scenario, it could be dual triggered. The problem is that if South Korea doesn't get involved in the war, right? Like suppose China does go for Taiwan and South Korea doesn't get involved, China's going to want to do everything in its power to prevent North Korea from attacking, because that would immediately trigger South Korean involvement. And frankly, South Korea is just a lot stronger than North Korea in every, as we've seen from the current wars that Israel has been involved in, the technological capability of a nation matters a lot. And the level of corruption within a nation matters a lot. And a nation can take on much bigger opponents if those opponents are corrupt and can't manage decentralized military forces. And so, the US would take that card, bring North Korea into the war, but we get South Korea. Yeah, that's a great card to have, right?
Sure.
So that's again why it's sort of irrelevant, the South Korea question. To go over the specific military equipment that was on display here. So Venezuela has long been one of China's biggest arms customers in Latin America. Since 2005, they bought systems including the JY-27A, a mobile range, long-range anti-stealth radar. They bought the HQ-9 and the HQ-12 surface-to-air missile SAM batteries, and they layered these with Russian S-300 Palestinians. I was going to make this episode talking about Russia as well, but I wanted to keep this focus on China. They, in terms of how they formed, how the systems performed, they failed completely. The U.S. stealth helicopters and aircraft entered Venezuela totally undetected.
Oh gosh, so they had this total false sense of security. Like, don't worry, we bought the anti-stealth radar.
Yeah, they were quickly blinded and jammed by EA-18G Growler electronic warfare, and none of the Chinese or Russian SAMs fired effectively. Keep in mind how scary that is if you're China now, right? It wasn't like the systems performed poorly; they were so outmatched. They were completely irrelevant.
It's kind of nice though. I would appreciate it as China having all of these test cases for our military technology. Better with Iran and Venezuela than with them in some scenario. So I guess, the best way to test your military capability is to have someone else pay for it. Basically, Iran and Venezuela subsidized it by buying these things from them, and then have them play test it in live scenarios.
Yeah, this is no longer a fluke in terms of Chinese systems. This is the rule. They are completely
So it's well documented that Chinese military tech has failed consistently both in Venezuela and Iran when matched with American military tech, correct?
Yes, and there's been separate failures in Pakistan, but that's a separate scenario I'm not going to go too deep on.
Oh, wow. Okay, so three different locations, all Chinese military tech.
People don't understand how corrupt countries are in terms of like how incompetent they can be. I think a lot of people, they see a big country, they see shiny things, and they think, oh, this country, a good example is Iran's military tanks, for example. They had something called the Suleimans, and I'll put one on screen here, and they're very pretty tanks. They're actually an American tank that's around, I think, 70 years old, where they have just basically put metal plates over it to make it look more angular.
They added skins.
Yeah, they added skins. They added skins to old-timey tanks.
That's amazing.
And people can be like, well, China isn't that. Look, and China has good drones. You know who had Chinese drones was Iran. But On top of the Chinese drones that Iran had. Oh, sorry, I was going to go over one of my favorite stories about China to give you an idea of what I mean and why people at the head of China can be so scared when you can go and you see the display and you think that this stuff works and then you realize it's all fake. Is for the Olympic Games when they wanted to look like very, cutting edge and green and like we're so much better than the West. And they had
This is the Suleiman tank. It does just look like someone put like cardboard or like, I don't know, like cool metal over a tank. It like just they covered it. It kind of reminds me of like, when like families at home make tanks out of cardboard, like Halloween costumes. It kind of looks like that, don't you think?
Yes. Is it so much worse than you expected, Simone?
It's just about what you described, actually. So pretty good for our audio only listeners.
But well, speaking of so during the Olympic Games, they wanted to look really, high tech and everything.
Sure.
And so they had on street corners air powered street lamps. And it turned out that not only did they not work, but they used electricity to spin the fans to make it look like they were working.
That's adorable. So wait, people knew that because if there was no wind, they were still spinning.
I don't know how people figured this out. I mean, just the extent that you get this within Chinese culture, because it's so centralized, there's just so much room for grift. And so there isn't a good understanding at the top how much of their equipment actually works. And now that more and more of Chinese equipment is sourced from within China, there is even more doubt. To give another example of one of their stealth detection systems completely failing, Israel sent in, this was a case where over Tehran, a Iranian fighter jet was downed by an Israeli fighter jet. And one, this is insane that they have that much air control of Tehran to begin with, right? But it's also insane the way it went down. Okay. What the Israeli fighter jet was, and I'll put pictures on screen and you'll immediately see how comical this was. It was a completely cutting edge stealth fighter, like a best in class aircraft. The Iranian aircraft was an aircraft that was really made for training. It had no chance against the Israeli plane. And a lot of people are like, why did they even go off the ground? Why even waste a pilot on that, right?
Yeah.
And the answer may be that they couldn't tell it apart from a drone.
With their tech, or just with their knowledge.
It's the Chinese tech. They can't tell Israeli fighter jet from a drone.
That's really bad. Okay. Wow.
And note here, they have taken down 7 drones, American drones.
Okay.
So no planes or boats, but a few drones. That's good for you, Iran. And people here note like the constant lashing out of Iran, the damage to surrounding Gulf countries' infrastructure as like some sort of failure on America's part. Like, oh, they're still sending rockets. It's like, no, that's further geopolitically isolating Iran, right? Like that's not earning them goodwill in the Gulf, right? Like especially when a lot of these countries are protecting themselves, like the UAE, with America bought systems. That's a good economic opportunity for the United States in the future to sell them more of those. Talk about, depleted weapon supplies.
Now, yeah, I guess this has been a big sales pitch for American military tech.
And Israeli. These systems that failed marketed aggressively as equivalent to Western technology by China up until now. So just there we were looking at Venezuela. There was the $5 billion agreement signed in secret with Iran, and the known equipment that it included is the CM-302 anti-ship cruise missiles. These are supersonic missiles with a range of 290 kilometers, designed to skim the water surface at high speeds to evade ship defenses.
Wow.
The HQ, and keep in mind, none of these ended up hitting American ships. A few commercial tankers maybe, but no American ships. HQ-9B surface-to-air anti-ballistic missile system, the HQ-1B surface-to-air missile system, the FN-6 manpads, the LC-9B long-range surveillance radar, and the Type 305A air surveillance radar, and the SLC-2 counter-battery radar for locating artillery. And they acquired Sunflower 200 kamikaze drones, and they acquired HQ-19 anti-satellite interceptor missiles. I think they did actually take down one satellite.
And these were things, wait, that Venezuela purchased from China?
No, these things Iran purchased from China.
Oh, okay.
And again, these largely failed. So we lost 3 F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jets March 1st, 2026, in a friendly fire incident involving Kuwaiti air defenses near the Ali Al-Sam Air Base. All 6 crews survived after ejecting, and the aircraft were valued at around $282 million and were destroyed. We lost 7 MQ-9 Reaper drones that were down by Iranian fire, but that's it.
Kuwaiti defense?
Yeah, I think it was automated Kuwaiti defense system, probably systems we gave them. Okay, so the system that shot down the American jets was indeed American in origin, and what happened is some of the only casualties, at least on the American side on this war, had been recently killed in Kuwait due to bombs that had gone into the country from Iran. By the way, for people who are wondering, most of these bombs aren't flying anymore. Iran is like at 5% or something of the bombing that they were early in the campaign. But anyway, so the 6 American service members have been killed by one of these. And so the Kuwaiti operatives, who were not as well trained as the Americans but had American equipment, were incredibly on edge. And when they saw signals in the sky, they shot reflexively. So keep in mind, these attacks may have been happening without Kuwait knowing that they were going to happen. All of a sudden, you see a bunch of fighter jets. Systems may have been automated. But the point being is, it's not that our equipment is inassailable. If you have competent equipment that is American or Israeli bought, our equipment was able to take down our equipment, right? It's unassailable when going up against Chinese and Russian equipment.
Interesting. And then what do you make of Trump expressing such warm regard for both President Putin and Xi Jinping? I'm so confused by this. In recent press conferences, for example, Trump was talking about his conversation with Vladimir Putin and about how impressed he was with the American progress in Iran, though of course it's hard to tell when Trump has been genuinely flattered by Putin or when Putin is just mocking Trump and Trump doesn't understand.
No, I think what happened is that at first Putin, like a lot of people, thought Trump was a fool, and I think that he did mock him in a lot of press and stuff like this. I think that if you contrast the US's recent military incursions with Russia's recent military incursions, Putin might be feeling a little bit like, wait a second. Does Trump actually know what he's doing? He made me look very foolish in comparison. It's almost the exact opposite reaction to what Putin had. Putin had this big plan of how he's going to have this big military win without any, losses, and how it's going to be overwhelming force and blah, blah, blah. And Trump comes in with a totally new way of doing things. See our other episode where we talk more about that. And I genuinely suspect that Trump got on a call with Putin. This is my modeling of this. Putin internally does not like what's happening in Iran. He apparently has been helping Iran target oil tankers and stuff like this to try to damage global economy. Of course he would. It increases the price of his own oil, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
which is embargoed. Another thing recently discussed was that Trump, I think, allowed, India to take one Russian oil tanker without any penalties because things are all messed up with oil right now and India really needed it or something.
Yeah. Anyway, the point being is I can imagine internally Putin might be seething at Trump, but when you get on a call with somebody who's nice to you, and the thing about Trump with people like Putin and stuff like that is, even if you look at where there have been fights like the Zelensky JD fight, that wasn't initiated by Trump. Trump is genuinely pretty amicable with world leaders unless they are openly being hostile to him. So he gets on a call and he's like, hey, Putin, and Trump's probably pretty excited about what's going on in Iran right now. Can you believe what we just did? We did. And if I'm Putin, right, first of all, you're going to be like, yeah, you actually have done pretty well compared to what I expected. But in addition, Putin's probably flattering him, trying to get more military information, because Trump's on the phone all giddy about what the successes we've had in Iran.
Yeah.
And I'm Putin, and I'm like, wait, can I get more information by telling him to talk more about all of his victories? Like,
Maybe Trump is also so friendly with Russia and China, or at least voicing such warm regard toward them, because in his view now, he has demonstrated that he has negotiating power, and Mr. Art of the Deal loves knowing that he has the bargaining chips at this time.
well, this is the way that Trump always does deals. When the other person is playing hard to get, and we've actually seen this in real time play out, so we can tell from Trump's public speeches what's going on in his private calls. By this, what I mean is there have been instances in which somebody was saying really bad things about Trump publicly, but Trump was saying really positive things about them publicly, and then a bunch of deals come out that are hugely favorable to the United States. The new leader of Venezuela is a great example of that. That to me implied that Trump knew under the table they were having positive negotiations, and he's not going to badmouth her just because she's badmouthing him. He's like, I understand why you have to do this, right? With Xi Jinping and Putin, what this tells me is he feels he's getting what he wants in the conversations he's having with him. And why shouldn't he? Putin had a defense pact with Iran, right? Like, they should have come in. Now, realistically, could they have, given how tied down they are in
Oh my
Ukraine right
gosh,
now?
no.
That
Yeah.
would have been insane. Could China have? Honestly, I think it would have been the right call for China to come in Iran. People can be
And
like,
do what though? Really?
well, so the problem is at least make it costly for the United States. If China had tried to come in, at least we may not have been able to hold Iranian airspace.
Well, but then there would be precedent for us being in open military conflict, whereas right now we're just tense frenemies.
Right. Okay. So let's go over why I think it was demonstrably stupid for China to not intervene in this. Now, I don't think that anyone could have made this call in the speed that China needed to make this call, but China could have defended Iran, tried air defense of Iran, keep it limited as an opportunity to get information on how good their systems really are, right? Which would have been very important for China. 2, to prevent the US and Israel from getting complete air dominance over Iran. And 3, make America look really, really bad. Because if China gets involved, then everyone can say this is a global war, this is a world war, even though it's not. China could have easily, with the United States, if China had done that and said, and we will not take this conflict outside the border of Iran, everyone else would have respected that, because nobody wants a global war with China. China doesn't want that. We don't want that. But the real benefit to China over this is it would have made it way harder for US to maintain the moral high ground in a defense of Taiwan if China tried to attack Taiwan. Right? Because it could be like, oh, look at this instance where they attacked this innocent foreign power and we came in to protect them, right? It would have really bolstered them in that position, given them a lot more information, and it would have made the United States hugely reticent to get involved in another conflict. But the speed at which the US achieved air superiority was in Iran, unfortunately, I think, and China can see this too, emboldens the US in any sort of future potential conflict here, thinking what could happen with Taiwan. And I want to keep in mind what analysts were saying and how they got everything so wrong, because this is also important. You hear just some of the words from analysts like Peter Zeihan saying, Caracas is a fortress, without the surrounding context. And the surrounding context shows you geopolitically why they misunderstood things so hugely. So in Zeihan talking about this, right, he goes, there's a very strong coastal uplift with mountains basically paralleling the coast. So to get to Caracas, you actually have to go into the mountains and then punch through a couple of tunnels, one of which is about 1.33 miles long. The other one's a little less than 1/3 of a mile, 1/2 mile somewhere in between. The hard part is keeping the city and the country alive. You're talking about hours and any number of ways that things can go wrong. So first here, note that he's thinking a traditional invasion force, right? Which wasn't what we did at all, right? And so because he's thinking a traditional invasion, like what Putin attempted and got punched in the face, he's making huge miscalculations about their actual defensibility. Then he goes on, the hard part is keeping the city and the country alive. You're talking about hours in any number of ways a thing could go wrong. It turns out all you need to do, and Trump has said this, the press said, who do you want running Iran? And Trump said, a regime insider. he said that, yeah, the son of the Shah would be nice, but what we really want is a regime installer. He said that's what we did in Venezuela, that's what we want in Iran, right? That's how you maintain stability, which wasn't something that people had really done before in terms of geopolitics, which was this really ingenious play that Trump essentially invented. Then you've got, in terms of Iran, Hatice Sorek, who called Iran an impregnable fortress. He said, due to its geographical position, Iran is practically an impregnable fortress. The Zagros mountain mastiff, which defies the Iran, Turkey, and much of the Iran-Iraq border, would make an invasion completely impractical. Then I point to the invincibility of the Iranian nation, which, this is what the previous Ayatollah said. We'll get to this in a second, actually, because it's an important point. But what we're seeing here is they keep imagining an on-the-ground tank to hold the country invasion, not I can act within your country with impunity. And the way the Iran war was carried out is very different from the Venezuela war, right? And it says something very different. The fact that we had recently just bombed Iran a bunch, ended that bombing on our terms, come back and bomb them a bunch, and might be able to the point where we have aerial dominance within their own country. We might be able to say after this, okay, we let the war come over. You have a new Ayatollah. 6 months later, we come in when we know that he's going to be in a boardroom and we bomb that room. Right? That's sort of the situation until you guys do what we want, because we can act with impunity within your borders from an aerial position.
You think that's why the Trump administration is being so cagey about timing, and why they're also being so cagey about defining success. Yeah. When they mean unconditional surrender, I mean, it's really more just, they've been clear. We will keep taking out leaders until we like the leader you've chosen. That's basically just, yeah, sure, we'll calm down for a little bit and then we'll be back as long as it takes.
One thing that has been good about this war is I think it's shown me really easily who is actually not pro the United States interests, and all the right is just a bought and paid for shill. I don't know if you've seen Tucker Carlson.
We've been accused of being propagandists.
Of course we have, but these are people who are stupid and listen to the propagandists. They literally, like, to give you an example of how crazy the propagandists are, Tucker Carlson, did you see his interview on this?
I did not, no.
He said that Trump is asking for a unconditional surrender from Iran. And he goes, and do you know what unconditional surrender means?
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. I don't think Americans would voluntarily participate in it. I just don't think we can do that. And let's not lie to ourselves. We're moving toward that.
Yeah, soundbite.
And he's like, and I don't think
sense. He made it seem like that's some kind of definition.
And then he goes on to say that I don't think that a lot of Americans want to get that Trump. He literally words it like Trump's going to put out a call to American citizens, because he's like, and I don't think a lot of American citizens would be interested in that. He's going to put out a call to American servicemen, being like, who wants to get on the rape train?
Yeah, please fill out this Google form. To get on the
because list. This is what but I think that you would say something that anyone with basic common sense knows is not true, and is not true in an almost comical sense. Like, you have to assume your audience is really stupid. And keep in mind that Tucker Carlson was also the one who was saying that Venezuela was great because they kill gay people, right? And that we should be better allies with them, and that the Maduro's regime is awesome. You heard about this, right?
Oh, no, I didn't. I thought you were referring by mistake to his whole Russia thing.
No. He had a thing with Maduro. He had an interview, and he talked about how great they are, and that in the United States we don't realize how socially conservative Venezuela is, and thus why they're such a good ally, or could be such a good ally, which they are now. Trump handled that. That was fantastic. But I just don't know how you can hear somebody say something like that and still be like, this person is being honest with me, right? And for the people who are like, oh, well, there's Israel shills out there or something. The Israel shills aren't saying stuff like if that's the only reason somebody would be pro the bombing of Iran, not a extracted war, but the type of conflict that we're in right now with Iran, the people who are pro that, I haven't heard them say stuff as crazy as this means that we need to go in and rape all of their women and children. Right? Like, to me, it means at least they assume that their audiences aren't as stupid, which is just wild to me that he went there. That was one of the craziest things I've heard with this. If you want to hear what the Ayatollah said about his country's defensibility, he goes, I point to the invincibility of the Iranian nation, which is, of course, due to Islam. This invincibility can be observed in the nation's victory against Saddam's invasion and resistance against hostile conspiracies over 40 years. So it's important to remember that this can be seen as disconfirming of the faith of the founders of the country, if we can, and if Israel can continue to act with impunity within Iran's borders. And I love when people are like, well, now Iran's going to do terrorism in the United States. Iran has been funding potential terror attacks within the United States for decades at this point. Like, literally, they probably spend over $100 million a year, and I think that that's probably a low number, on funding terrorist groups with the goal of attacking the United States. Okay, so I way lowballed it. So I decided to ask an AI, I said, how much money on average does Iran spend funding terrorist groups that have America as one of their targets? And it said expert estimates on the low end would put it at $1 billion, and on the high end would put it at $2 to $3 billion a year. If you're like, oh, now Iran will start funding terrorist cells that want to attack the US, they were spending at least $1 billion on this a year up until now. People who act like this is just the concern of Israel are frankly cucked in the extreme. They have two, one of them in custody right now, confirmed attempted assassination attempts against Trump alone. Right? Like,
oh, you're right. Yeah.
This idea of now Iran is going to be, you could not have been more motivated than what they were already doing in anti-American attacks.
Yeah.
And that's where I really get it when these Americans are like, you'd only attack Iran for Israel. They tried to assassinate Trump twice.
It's a pretty hostile enemy. There's also a lot of people holding the United States responsible for deaths in this conflict. You know, children in rubbles of buildings. The girls' school that was bombed.
Way less people have died since we started this than civilians were killed. Like, Iranian protester civilians were killed.
No, they haven't sent me any messages, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard that. I just don't think that they actually care. They would have cared about the Iranian civilians that were being killed. And most of the people who are making these complaints when Iran was killing civilians were saying stuff like, you know, this is like Nick Fuentes. He was cheerleading the regime while they were slaughtering civilians, right?
Was he really? I have no idea. I haven't been following what he's been saying, honestly. I'm just so confused because I'm hearing such a consistent story on one side, honestly, both from the left and right, which is so strange that both the left and right are saying the same things about our conflict in Iran, which is, we never wanted to be involved. We're killing people, and this is horrible.
Who on the right? Not a single right-wing YouTuber I watch has been anything other than totally enthusiastic.
Yeah, like Asmongold's enthusiastic. That's the one person I'm seeing who's
Asmongold, Leaflet, Nugzanor, the guy, little troll guy, the troll avatar, what is he, Romanian TV?
Oh, it's sitting on top of Daddy's cabinet.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm literally only seeing people pro this, and I'm talking about every single YouTuber I watch.
Anna and Dasha on the Red Scare podcast, who are like sort of big right-leaning now influencers, or both.
Are they right-leaning? What are their right-leaning positions?
I think they're right-leaning. Yeah, I mean, one of them voted for Trump. I think the other one maybe just didn't vote. But yeah, they have on all like the major right-leaning guests.
They don't have any kids, by the way. One kid.
One has a kid.
Two women. And this is something I've persistently seen about the faction on the right that takes these positions, right, is they are not the fecund position on the right. And they're not going to be relevant in long-term right-leaning culture in the United States.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, you know, if they vote for our guys, it's okay to partner with them for now. I'm just not seeing it among any of the YouTubers I follow. And the people who have heard are the ones who have, you know, everyone's like, oh, they're AstroTurf here, they're AstroTurf.
Okay. It's on the other side.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you're seeing this, that our social media circles are so different. But my social media circle is very new right. And like the new right is the faction that's pro this stuff. So.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that from a perspective of we want humanitarian crises to end, this regime is running itself to the ground. This regime has made it very clear that it is an existential threat to the United States, that it basically wants the United States to not exist, and it wants Israel to not exist. And Israel was like, hey, we're going in. Are you with us or not? And maybe the United States was too. Also, the United States alleged at some point in this process that there was an imminent threat to the United States in all this, which we don't know about. And maybe we can't.
2 assassination attempts on a president is a pretty imminent threat.
Yeah, but they were like 3 or 5 days, like something in the future was going to happen that would have happened had they not done this. That was also discussed as well. So, yeah.
The administration's decision on this, as Simone pointed out, wasn't to go to war or not go to war. It was Israel's doing this. Are you going to come in or not?
Yeah, though Trump later said that we pressured Israel into it. Though that sounds like something he would say because he doesn't want to ever follow someone else's.
I don't believe that.
Lead. Yeah.
I believe Israel. This is just too risky to do after something so as big a win as the Maduro thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially given how unpopular it is right now among many Americans, just whinging about it.
Well, I mean, the question is, and the long term is, the people who are complaining about this are like, this is going to be another Iraq. Do they reflect when we pull out and it's not another Iraq? Do they say, oh, I was completely wrong? Or do they just listen to the next thing their propagandist of the week says?
The narrative, I get presumably when we pull out, because I just don't really see there being a very clear conclusion to all this, is going to be, well, you know, all we did was go in and kill a bunch of people and not achieve anything because basically a copy of the previous guy is now in power and we lost millions of dollars and a lot of our weapons stockpile. And what do we have to show for it? Absolutely nothing. That's what the narrative is going to be.
This the stupidest narrative I've ever heard. Like, clearly we already have a huge benefit because of Iran's lower geopolitical position within the region after randomly lashing out at all of the neighboring countries, right? Like, that's already been an enormous geopolitical win for us within the region. In addition, Iran is significantly less capable militarily and economically after this, even in that scenario.
Mm-hmm. By the way, is there reasoning as to why they were lashing out at all these not necessarily hostile to them nations?
So the core reason and their core military philosophy is that they're going to keep bombing all of the major infrastructure. So this is desalination plants that are important for living in the region, and oil processing facilities and gas processing facilities in the region, to do enough economic damage to then blame that economic damage on the United States to make the United States look bad for this war. They're essentially
trying to hold the entire region hostage.
Right. But the problem is that the US doesn't rely on this region economically. China does.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the core topic of the video. So it's working. It's working. It is having some economic impact, and it is making people be like, yeah, we don't want to be in here especially given that this is happening with Iran, right? That they're doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's a working strategy for giving them leverage within the conflict, but it has a exactly opposite impact on their geopolitical influence.
Yeah, they're digging a deep grave, but they're also, I mean, existentially threatened. So what do you expect?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. But in general, the bigger picture of China, you're saying, is China has now discovered basically that its military tech is not as efficacious as they thought it was. And they may be changing their stance on Taiwan, which may have been under imminent threat. So perhaps a buy one, get one free of the United States not invading, well, we'll say attacking Iran is that perhaps Taiwan has been given some more time.
Or they're prepping to begin attacking Taiwan right now, and they haven't taken any lessons from this. That's obviously the other or in this.
Well, yeah, because that's the other narrative that's being spread in mainstream media, is that now we have less capability to be involved in some kind of conflict with China over Taiwan if we want to go out and try to participate there as well. So
yeah, we don't want to end up with Russia with a bunch of rotten bombs. You know, we make a lot of bombs, use them. Okay.
Keep it fresh. Yeah, I got to do that whole Mormon thing where, you know, you take your old emergency food that's about to expire and you do potluck and you
a fresh supply. Yes.
Got to use up the old stuff and then bring in the new stuff. So you have good, fresh emergency supply.
Well, it matters, as we saw in the Russia-Ukraine war.
You're right, actually. You make a good point. I mean, in any infrastructure ages, it really is. I wonder if we are going through the older stuff, just like all the inventory managers of the US military being like, well, this was going to expire anyway. We'd better use it. Just like people making casseroles.
Love you, Simone. Have a spectacular day. And it's interesting to see what China does next.
I'm genuinely curious now. Thanks for giving me a bigger picture of this, because what I'm seeing, and I think what many of our viewers are seeing, is this very myopic, oh, isn't it so horrible that we're involved in Iran take? And you are bringing focus back to a larger picture and geopolitical story.
Yeah, the horror of other involvement in Iran is China is being economically hurt, which of course hurts us because we live in a global economy, but we are being hurt because China is being hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And to a lesser extent, Europe.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, interesting. Thank you. And I love you.
Love you too.
I think I'm going to chase the other kids down and just shear them in the backyard like sheep, because they are also in need of haircuts, as are you. Desperately. So get ready for that. Know that you will not be spared. The knife, the razor, whatever it is. Aren't you glad, by the way, that electric razors exist? Can you imagine that people used to get shaved with like a straight blade? I wonder how many murders were conducted that way.
I don't use electric razors.
Well, I know you don't. I'm just thinking about shaving in general and grooming history. Well, I mean, when you think about it, since barber shops were also medical establishments in Europe for the longest time, they must have, like, really the way it was just seen like, well, if we have a knife this close to your face, we might as well get dental work done then too. Like,
yeah,
you're already in danger. Don't worry about it.
And today's episode, I guess you didn't get to comments.
I did not.
I am working on better coding for the agents now, because the agents are live with our fab.ai. And so hopefully they can be, good for making. What I really want to do is task someone with making games, because I have some specific game concepts I really want to get out there.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that.
Live coding is because the agent system can like do npm start and see the game it's working on and everything like that, and capture the back end and the front end. It can do more of the iterative process. No, this is when it's all working. Right now, they're still in an early stage, but the rest of the site is fully working now. So that's neat. If you're interested in like AI chatbots. What happened? There's kids in my bed.
I told you I didn't have a plan to get in here.
Why are there kids in Daddy's bed? Why were you hiding? What do you want?
I want to whisper something to the people. I want to whisper something to them.
Whisper.
Okay, yeah.
What? I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
I have a plan.
Do you have a plan?
No, I don't. I don't.
Stop it! Everybody out of my room!
I said I was whispering it. I'm making this.
Out! 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 Everybody out, you goofuses!
I'll get them out. You can go back down in the. I'll get them out.
No, no, no. Be nice. Be nice.
Go out. Go out, Torsten.
Go out. If you do 20 lessons, you can stay in Daddy's room. Otherwise, back downstairs.
Oh, but your job is to be.
Get downstairs.
I tried to show you how you're not doing a plan.
Okay, I saw. No, Torsten! Get downstairs now!